One of my favorite people to speak to in the business. We go back many, 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 many years. Derek Brunson, welcome in. Derek, how's everything?
Everything good. Um, Damn, you know what? Funny enough, man, you don't get the credit you deserve in MMA, man. I think you need to really be out there a little bit more. Even like ESPN, you cover the sport good, and you've been doing it for several years.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, we go back a long ways. Like I said, when I say that, like I wasn't kidding. We go back to, I think our first conversations before your first fight in Strikeforce, if I'm not mistaken.
Possibly, yeah, a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate taking the time for me as always. Obviously, big fight coming up for you. At this point, just a few weeks away, man. How is everything? Are you down? I assume you're down in Florida.
Oh no, I think I got about 5, 6 weeks. So I'm gonna go to Florida in about 6 days. So I'm
Okay.
I'm still in North Carolina, back at my home gym, just fine tuning, working on things, and they're gonna make that trip and get in camp mode.
Yeah, absolutely. When we last spoke, it was after your win over Edmund Shabazian, obviously a huge TKO for you, knocking off one of the biggest prospects in the sport. And after that, you told me, you said, hey, at this point, I want a top guy. I want a guy ranked ahead of me. And we know how that works with the the timing in the UFC and things like that. You ended up getting Kevin Holland, building a little bit of hype behind him. Obviously, coming off a win over Jacare, was a very good fighter, of course. Were you ultimately happy with this matchup?
At the end of the day, when things get done, I don't really care. Like I'm always happy with any matchup that come together. But yeah, as we talked before, I wanted somebody in that top three, top four range. I wanted somebody that's really gonna put me in that title talk. That'll be no question, but to get a rematch. With Izzy or whoever or whatever they're gonna do. I just want to put myself in that title picture.
Yeah, absolutely. With a guy like Derek, with a guy like Kevin Holland, though, you do get a guy who chats a lot, who likes to talk a lot, and obviously he kind of built it up on social media a little bit. I mean, you've been here before, you've seen these guys, you face those kind of
Yeah.
guys. Does that always add a little extra layer of enthusiasm for a fight like this?
It's fun. It's fun for him. For me, it's just business as usual. I've been there. I've done that. I've been around the game for a long time, and I've got drawn into where people say stuff, and we're going back and forth, and then maybe I really want to take their head off. But I mean, I had to stop kidding myself. I'm trying to take everybody's head off. So no matter whether somebody talk a lot of trash or don't talk a lot of trash, I'm still going to give them that same energy. So yeah, it doesn't matter. So it's a good matchup, and I'm definitely excited about it.
Have you been impressed by what you've seen out of Kevin Holland?
Have I been impressed with what I seen on Hollins? Um, you know what? I'm gonna say yes, just so I can keep the fight exciting. So when I beat him, everybody be like, "Oh man, he was so good," blah blah blah. But I think he's pretty average. Nothing too crazy. He's a long guy, like to stay rangy. Talks a lot of trash. He's just a high energy guy. But I've seen a lot of good things. I've seen a lot of bad things.
Yeah. Now, listen, I take nothing away from Jacare. The guy's a legend. You've obviously fought him. You know how good Jacare is. But when you look at the level of competition he's fought overall, now he's fought some solid guys, but not he hasn't had that record of top 10 guys, top 15 guys. Basically Jacare was kind of the first one in there. And again, credit to him for getting the win. But you've had that. You've gone to the wars. You've faced the best, and beaten a lot of the best. Do you feel like that's one area your experience in these kind of fights really does help you? Because this is kind of like his first, real moment in the spotlight. I mean, Jacare wasn't a main event. It was obviously a good, I mean, again, great win, but like this is kind of like his first moment where he's going to be facing an established guy in a main event. I mean, we got to be honest, Derek. That's a lot of pressure. Some guys don't handle it very well.
Oh yeah, and you have a guy, Jacare, obviously past his prime. I mean, you cover the sport of MMA for a guy to get knocked out from his back. You don't see it much, and it looks spectacular. But from a fighter, all the fighters who really fight and in the trenches, they kind of look at that and like, maybe it's time for Jacare to retire. Because that's not a common thing. And Jacare had a mental lapse there where Kevin Holland was making jokes. He liked to talk on the bottom, and Jacare started playing with him, and then Kevin Holland just set up and just started swiping him in the face. So it's one of those things you got to stay focused out there. And for a veteran, you can't make mistakes out there. And with me, if a guy start talking on the bottom, when you start talking, I start punching even more. So we won't be seeing any of that. Where I'm letting back, playing games, laughing on bottom. So or on top, excuse me.
Yeah. Do you think it was, as you said, more of a case, and again, taking nothing away from the win, but do you think it was more of a fact that maybe Jacare doesn't quite have the chin that he maybe once had? Age just finally maybe caught up to him a little bit. I mean, listen, this is a Frankie Edgar just put out a post about his post fight, and he said this sport can be a cruel bitch, and it's true, man. Like you don't see it coming sometimes. Do you think maybe that's the case with Jacare? That maybe this isn't the Jacare that you fought, several years ago?
Oh no, I mean, it's definitely not Jacare I fought 3 years ago. I mean, you're talking about 3 more years when a guy is aging. With me, I know I've seen so many good guys come and go, and I see a lot of older veterans, taking losses and declining after age 32. So I know what it takes to stay on top of your game, and you have to match the fighter that you're fighting intensity, and it has to be business every time you go out there. When you start going out there, playing their game and in a different mindset, then it's like, maybe it's time to do something else, but you got to stay locked in because this is an unforgivable sport. People only remember your last fight. And then funny enough, people only remember, the person who you're fighting, then they forget about your last fight and remember their fights. So that's just the name of the game, and you got to be ready for every moment.
Yeah. Now I know in a perfect world, I know when we spoke last, you mentioned maybe Darren Till, maybe Paulo Costa, guys that would have given you a chance to get closer to that title. But after the Edmund Shabazian thing, and Edmund, to his credit, very respectful guy. Obviously, I know there was no bad blood there, but it was more of a kind of proving yourself to say, hey, you're going to hand me a hype train. I'm going to derail it pretty hard. And that's what we saw happen. Is there a little bit of fun in that? Because Kevin, of course, you're coming off 5 wins in a year. A lot of people, said he was the breakout fighter of the year, things like that. Like, yeah, maybe it doesn't, get you that much closer in the rankings, but is there something fun about stopping the hype train?
Oh yeah, I'm having fun with this these days. These the top five guys. They're not exactly raising their hand to fight me. Like I asked to fight Carla Paz, what's his name, Costa, Paulo, however you say it, whatever. But I asked to fight him, and he wasn't too interested in fighting me. I asked to fight Till. He wasn't too interested in fighting me. A lot of these guys, I even put my hand out there. I would have rematched Whitaker. That fight was a long time ago. I've changed. He's changed. So yeah, these guys aren't trying to fight me. So yeah, I sit back and embrace these matches that they give me. Guys with a lot of hype, guys that's coming up, guys who the fans feel like is going to do damage, beat me up. So I like that challenge. That type of stuff don't bother me. I'm just ready to go out there and beat people up.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, Derek, because even though you've been a top 10 fighter for so much of your career, especially in the UFC, I think people kind of forget you kind of grew up, in the sport. I mean, when
Yeah.
you came into Strikeforce, you were basically a wrestler, who's coming in fighting, and you've learned on the job, and you're still, in terms of like your development, you're still young. I mean, you're still growing. I think what we've seen out of your last few fights, we're really seeing you put it all together where you've kind of, figured out the striking part, figured out the wrestling part, figured out how to match it all together. And obviously with your new team down at Sanford MMA, it seems like you are putting all the pieces together. And I know I asked you this question a lot in your last few fights, but do you feel like this really is? We're now starting to see the best you've ever been in terms of putting everything together. I think we saw a lot of that in the Shabazian fight.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I still have room to grow. I'm starting to be a better version. Like you said, I came in the sport as a wrestler where I was really reliant upon the wrestling, and my stand up even looked cleaner than, let's say 5 fights ago, being that I would just be economical with my strikes and I'll fit my wrestling in. Then I started transforming to trying to fit my strikes in more, getting away from the wrestling a little bit. I went like 5 fights without taking anyone down and knocked everybody out. So now it's like I'm finding that evolution to where I can mix both of them. Um, my striking and my wrestling, and make sure that I'm not overextending and setting both of them up and letting them work off of each other. So yeah, I really, really starting to find myself, and starting to be, the best version of myself.
As a guy who not, a few years ago was able to basically out wrestle Yoel Romero in a fight, who is obviously one of the best wrestlers to ever come in MMA. Obviously, I'm not going to get too deep into game plan, but when you look at that aspect of this fight, and when you look at Kevin Holland, do you lick your chops a little bit at the opportunity to wrestle with him? I mean, do you think that guy can survive on the ground with you?
Nah, he's pretty crafty off his back, as far as BJJ goes, but I have some of the most underrated BJJ in MMA, I would say, being that I haven't been on my back in a fight at all. My whole career, I've never been taken down. So it's like I always been like, oh man, I want to armbar, I want to triangle somebody, but I've never been taken down. So I haven't had the option to work my guard in a fight. Um, But yeah, no. Do I think you can survive on the ground with me, man? I don't think many can. You know, especially take guys down and putting pressure on them and just working the body head. I look to finish guys when I take them down. You know, so the punches, yeah. Once I get them to the mat, it can go south very quick.
Yeah, I mentioned the wrestling aspect, and wrestling in MMA is so different than just traditional wrestling. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah,
just, I mean, it's a whole different animal. I said this to Ryan Bader years ago when he was fighting. I think it was Phil Davis. And I said Phil was such an incredible collegiate wrestler, but I said I think Ryan was the better MMA wrestler, and I
right.
think that benefited him. You're not a guy to sit there and tout yourself, pat yourself on the back. When you think about what you just said, never been taken down. You've out wrestled guys in fights like Yoel Romero. Like, do you believe, like, when it's all said and done, like you might just be one of the best wrestlers to ever be in this sport? Not saying you won, you didn't win, NCAA titles left and right. You didn't go to the Olympics, but in MMA, not obviously it matters, but that doesn't always translate. Are you willing to say it? Do you believe you are one of the best wrestlers to ever be in this sport?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've wrestled with Olympians. I've trained with Division 1 All Americans, and if you ask those guys, I mean, they might be agreeing along those bases. I've seriously wrestled with multiple time Division 1 All Americans, and I pretty much, when it comes to grappling, I'm taking it to those guys. So yeah, I mean, I would have to say, and even still, I only wrestled 1 year in high school, and then I went to a Division 2 school and I All American 3 out of 4 years. I should have All American all 4 years. I had Division 1 offers after my freshman year. Even going into college as a senior in high school, only wrestling 1 year. I had D1, D2. The thing was, I signed my Division 2 letter of intent first. So it's one of those things. It's like I was constantly and still just getting better and better and better and better in wrestling also. So yeah, I was for sure say my wrestling is some of the best that MMA has ever seen for sure.
Yeah, and let's not discount that Division 2. I mean, look at Kamaru Usman, Division 2 national champion, another one I would say,
Right.
one of the best wrestlers in the sport. He didn't win he didn't win a Division 1 title, didn't go to the Olympics, but man, that guy's a beast. And you look at a guy like Ben Askren, Olympian. And again, I think Ben, obviously one of the greatest wrestlers to ever step into MMA. But again, he
Right.
never completely developed that other part of his game, and it makes a difference. So Division 2 credentials are nothing to be laughed at.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When you look at Usman versus Woodley, Woodley was what, two-time Division 1 All American, and you have Usman, who was a Division 2 guy, and when it came to the wrestling, he dominated that. Maybe 3 takedowns to 0, 4 takedowns to 0. He didn't get taken out in any. And when you talk about just MMA wrestling or Division 2, I mean, yeah, for sure, he definitely stood out on that one.
Yeah. Let me ask this, Derek, because again, your end goal here, whether it's Kevin Holland or whoever is going to be next after this, is to get to that title. And right now, we're dealing with kind of a weird time in the middleweight division because the
Yeah,
current champ, Israel Adesanya, is going up to fight at 205. Now, listen, I've said this numerous times. Never going to fault a guy for getting paid and adding accomplishments to his resume. So, good on him for getting that opportunity. If he can make it work, man, congratulations. I'm never gonna fault a guy for that. But it does kind of create a stall in division. Now you're not fighting that guy next, so maybe it really doesn't matter. But what do you make of the current state of the division? Because you got Marvin fighting Darren Till, you got obviously Paulo Costa and Robert Whitaker, and then you got yourself and Kevin Holland. It's like these three big middleweight fights coming up, and then you got the champion fighting at 205. So what do you make of the kind of the lay of the land at middleweight right now?
I mean, that's just the way the sport goes sometimes. So you just got to kind of buckle up and take care of what you got to take care of. None of this stuff matters to me if I don't go out there and take care of my business. I'm not even putting myself in the title picture if I don't take care of my business. So the first thing that I have to do is make sure I go out there March the 20th and take care of Holland, and then the rest will take care of itself. I mean, who knows? You might have a situation where, 205, you go up there, you put on muscle, you get big. You might not want to cut back to 85. So what does that leave? The title vacant for the two most surging guys. So I'm just, like I said, I'm making sure that I take care of what I'm supposed to take care of and focus on what I'm supposed to, which is myself. I need to go out there, look good, get a finish so I can put myself in the talks of potentially getting exactly what I've been aiming for this whole sport, and that's a title fight.
Yeah. Well, you said it earlier. Once the fight is made, you kind of let go of the, where you're talking about wanting one of those top ranked guys. And I know it's kind of hard to think about this before the fight, but if everything goes well, you beat Kevin Holland. I mean, at that point, it's got to be one of those guys, right? It's got to be Costa, Whitaker,
Oh yeah,
Derek, like Marvin, whoever wins. Like, it's got to be one of those guys, right?
yeah, for sure. The hand is forced. There's nothing else to do. I've seen them several times be like, oh, so and so, so and so. But yeah, the hand is forced. I would have taken out all the upcoming guys. There's no more young prospects. They have to wait their turn pretty much. So now it's time to take care of business at the top.
Yeah, if you take out Kevin Holland, you might have to change your nickname to the Prospect Killer. I'm just saying, like, you need a new
Oh
nickname. That might be
yeah,
the one you get, right?
absolutely.
Or the Hype Train Killer, one of the two.
Hype train killer. Yeah, I'm with it.
Well, Derek, it is always a pleasure to catch up, my man. I always appreciate taking the time. Obviously, have a good rest of your training camp. I know you're going to be down in Florida, man. That Florida team, man, those guys are killing, bringing in some killers. I just talked to Rory McDonald, who's down there now too. So you guys, you guys are killing it down there.
Yeah, I talked to Roy too. We were trying to link up training, and then yeah, he just made his way to Florida. So yeah, we got Nate Marquardt's down there. How about that for old school MMA, man? We have a lot of guys in there getting ready, grinding, and just this is good vibes, good team camaraderie right now for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Derek, again, have a good rest of your training camp. Thank you as always for taking the time. Best of luck coming up in the fight, and I'm sure we will catch up afterwards.
All right, sounds good, Jamie.
Talk to you soon.